Writing, I should have known the day was cursed when dirty water started dripping into my cereal. Not a little drip, either. A steady, disgusting tap, tap, tap from under the kitchen sink, spreading across the floor like my apartment had finally given up on me. I stood there in socks, holding a bowl of soggy Cheerios, staring at the growing puddle like maybe if I looked disappointed enough, it would fix itself. It did not. 10 minutes later, I had 3 towels on the floor, a trash can under the sink, and my landlord on speakerphone, sounding way too calm for a man whose building was actively flooding my life. I'm sending someone over. Today. I looked at the water creeping toward my laptop bag. Now would be great. He's good. Name's Mason. Just let him in. Then he hung up. Just like that. No apology. No warning. No emotional support. I muttered something I probably shouldn't repeat, and went back to throwing towels around like that would make me look less useless. By the time the knock came, I was sweaty, annoyed, and wearing an old Northwestern hoodie with toothpaste on the sleeve. Perfect first impression. I opened the door expecting some tired guy with a clipboard and bad news. Instead, I got him. Mason Reed stood in my hallway with a toolbox in one hand and a lazy half-smile on his face, like broken plumbing was his natural habitat. Dark hair, broad shoulders, work boots, gray t-shirt stretched across his chest in a way I absolutely did not need to notice before noon. His eyes dropped to the towels in my hand, then to the wet socks on my feet. Rough morning. My brain took one full second too long to respond. My sink is trying to kill me. His smile widened. Hate when they get personal. I stepped back to let him in, already telling myself to calm down. He was here to fix a leak. That was it. Normal adult situation. Nothing weird. Except he smelled like clean soap and cold air, and when he passed me, his arm brushed mine just enough to make my stomach tighten. Great. Fantastic. I was going to embarrass myself in front of the hot plumber. Mason walked into the kitchen and whistled low. You always make this much of a mess before noon? Or am I special? I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. That depends. Are you always this judgmental with strangers? He crouched by the sink, glancing back over his shoulder. Only the cute ones. The room went quiet. Not dramatic quiet. Worse. The kind where the refrigerator suddenly sounded too loud, and I became painfully aware of my own face. He turned back to the cabinet like he hadn't just thrown a live wire into my kitchen. I stood there holding a towel, completely useless. Maybe he flirted with everyone. Some guys were just like that. Friendly, confident, annoying. It probably meant nothing. That was what I told myself while he worked, pulling tools from his box, reaching under the sink, explaining something about a cracked supply line that I barely heard. I nodded at the right times and tried very hard not to stare at the way his forearm flexed when he tightened something. Ethan, can you hand me that smaller wrench? I froze. He remembered my name. My landlord had said it once on the phone. Once. I picked up the wrench and passed it to him. Our fingers touched. Barely. It should have been nothing. But Mason paused for half a second before taking it, his eyes lifting to mine from under the cabinet. Thanks. My chest felt stupidly tight. Yeah. No problem. He looked like he was about to say something else. Then the pipe gave a sharp little hiss, and he turned back to it. I exhaled like I had been holding my breath, which was embarrassing because I probably had. For the next 20 minutes, I pretended to answer emails at the kitchen table. I didn't read a single word. Mason worked quietly, except for the occasional comment that kept catching me off guard. You freelance. Graphic design. That poster yours? I glanced at my screen. Yeah. It's good. Simple. Casual. But when I looked over, he was already watching me, like he actually meant it. I looked away first. Obviously. Finally, he sat back on his heels and wiped his hands on a rag. Bad news. My stomach dropped for a normal reason this time. Please don't say that. I can stop the leak for now, but I need a part one don't have in the truck. Old building. Weird setup. So what does that mean? Mason stood, taller than he had any right to be in my small kitchen. Means I'll have to come back tomorrow. I should have been annoyed. I was not. That was the problem. Tomorrow. I repeated, way too calmly. Yeah. He grabbed his toolbox, then paused near the door. His eyes flicked down to my soaked socks. Try not to drown before then, Ethan. I rolled my eyes, but my face warmed anyway. I'll do my best. He opened the door, then looked back one more time. Good. I'd hate to lose my favorite emergency call. And before I could figure out whether that was a joke, he was gone. I stood in the middle of my half-flooded kitchen, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall, telling myself it meant nothing. He was just friendly. He was just good with people. He probably talked like that to everyone. Then I looked down and realized I was still holding the wrench he'd asked for. And worse, I was smiling. I barely slept that night, which was stupid because nothing had happened. A man had fixed my sink badly enough to need a second visit, made a few jokes, remembered my name, and left. That was it. Normal. Harmless. Completely not worth lying awake until 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling like I was 17 with a crush on a guy from math class. By 10 the next morning, I had cleaned my kitchen twice. Not once. Twice. I even moved the stack of unopened mail off the counter, like Mason Reed was going to walk in and report me to some hot plumber organization for being emotionally unprepared. Then I caught myself checking my hair in the microwave reflection and physically stepped away. Nope, I muttered. Absolutely not. The knock came at 11:15. One sharp tap, then 2 lighter ones. Like even his knocking had a personality. I opened the door, trying to look casual. Mason stood there with his toolbox again, this time wearing a dark blue work shirt with the sleeves pushed up. He looked me over for half a second, then his mouth tilted. You cleaned. My stomach dropped. No, I did not. His eyes moved past me to the kitchen, then back to my face. Ethan. Fine. A little. For me. I hated how fast my face got warm. For the health department. Mason stepped inside, smiling like he had won something. Sure. I closed the door behind him and immediately regretted how small my apartment felt with him in it. Yesterday, he had been an emergency. Today, he felt like someone I had been waiting for, which was much worse. He set his toolbox on the floor and crouched by the sink like this was all normal. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, trying to act like I had not spent 10 minutes choosing a shirt that looked like I had not chosen it. Mason glanced up. You sleep okay? Why? You have that look. What look? The freelance designer look. Half tired, half pretending coffee is a personality. I laughed before I could stop myself. That is rude. Accurate, though. He reached under the sink, shoulder brushing the cabinet door. Hand me the flashlight. I grabbed it from the counter and passed it down. His fingers closed around mine for a second instead of the flashlight. Not enough to be obvious. Too long to be nothing. My breath caught. Mason noticed. Of course he did. His eyes lifted slowly. You okay? I pulled my hand back and forced a shrug. Yeah. Static. Static. He repeated it like he did not believe me at all. Then he looked back under the sink, but the corner of his mouth stayed curved. I stood there feeling ridiculous, because my entire body had reacted to a hand touch over a flashlight. A flashlight. I needed help. For the next few minutes, he worked quietly. The only sounds were the metal clink of tools, the faint traffic outside, and my own brain making everything weird. I tried to focus on my phone, but every time Mason shifted, I looked up. Once, he caught me. You know, he murmured, still tightening something under the sink. Most people do not supervise this closely. I am making sure you know what you are doing. That why you keep staring at my face? I froze. Mason slid halfway out from under the cabinet and looked up at me. His hair was a little messy now. There was a smudge of dust near his jaw. He looked way too pleased with himself. I was not staring. No, so I imagined it. Probably. A beat passed. His gaze held mine, steady and warm. You are a terrible liar, Ethan. My chest tightened. Not because the words were intense. They were not. It was how he said my name again, softer than the rest of the sentence. Like he liked the shape of it. I looked away first, pretending to check the towel on the floor. Are all plumbers this annoying? Mason laughed under his breath and sat back on his heels. Only the ones doing premium service. Is flirting included in that? The second I said it, I wanted to disappear into the cabinet. Mason went still, just for a second. Then he stood, wiping his hands slowly on a rag. Now he was close. Not touching me, just close enough that I noticed. Depends. His voice dropped a little. Is it working? My throat went dry. I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. Mason watched me for another second, then looked down, almost like he had surprised himself too. I should finish the pipe. Yeah. My voice sounded strange. You should. He crouched again, and I turned toward the counter, gripping the edge like an idiot. It meant nothing. It had to mean nothing. He was just confident. Just playful, just good with people. But 10 minutes later, when he asked me to hand him the wrench, he did not look at the tools. He looked at me, and when our hands touched again, Neither of us moved right away. By the third visit, I had stopped pretending I was annoyed he had to come back. That was the part one did not want to admit. The first time Mason knocked on my door, he was an inconvenience. The second time, he was a problem. The third time, I was standing in my kitchen 5 minutes early, holding 2 mugs like a complete idiot, wondering if offering coffee to the plumber made me polite or pathetic. I heard his knock at exactly 11. Same rhythm. 1 sharp tap, 2 softer ones. My stomach reacted before I moved. Normal, I whispered to myself. This is normal. Then I opened the door. Mason looked at the mugs in my hands, then at me. His smile showed up slowly. Is one of those for me? Or are you having a difficult morning? I immediately regretted everything. I made too much. You made too much coffee. Yes. In 2 separate mugs? I stared at him. He stared back. Then he laughed, low and warm, and stepped inside before I could throw myself out the window. That is adorable. It is not adorable. It is caffeine management. Sure, Ethan. He took the mug from me, and his fingers brushed mine again. This time, I knew it was going to happen. That made it worse. Because instead of pulling away, I held still. Mason noticed. Of course he did. His eyes stayed on mine for a second too long, and the joke hanging between us just sort of died there. Not awkwardly. More like both of us suddenly remembered we were alone in my apartment with the door closed and no real reason to be standing that close. I looked away first. Again. The sink is this way, in case you forgot. Hard to forget. He walked past me into the kitchen. It has been haunting me. My plumbing has that effect on people. Not just your plumbing. I stopped moving. Mason did not look back right away. He just set his toolbox down like he had not said something that made my entire brain short out. Maybe I misheard him. Maybe he meant the apartment. Maybe he meant the old pipes. Maybe I needed to stop turning every sentence into evidence. But then he glanced over his shoulder, saw my face, and his expression shifted. Softer. Less playful. Too much. My throat went tight. What? The flirting. He said it so casually and not casually at all. Like he was giving me a door. Like he would back off if I wanted him to. That should have made it easier. It did not. I leaned against the counter and tried to sound normal. I did not say you were flirting. Mason's eyebrow lifted. You asked yesterday if flirting was included in the service. That was a joke. Was it? The kitchen got quiet. Outside, a car rolled by, bass faint through the window. Somewhere upstairs, my neighbor's dog barked once. I could hear all of it because neither of us was saying anything. Mason picked up his coffee and took a slow sip, eyes still on me over the rim of the mug. For the record, he murmured, I am not usually this bad at behaving professionally. My chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. That is supposed to make me feel better? No, his mouth curved, but his voice stayed low. It is supposed to make me honest. I did not know what to do with that. Honesty was much harder to dismiss than teasing. Teasing could be nothing. A habit. A personality. A guy who knew he looked good and liked watching people panic. But Mason standing in my kitchen, holding the coffee I made for him, looking almost nervous for the first time since I met him, that was different. He crouched by the sink a moment later, like giving both of us somewhere else to look. I handed him tools when he asked. Flashlight. Rag. Wrench. Each time, I tried to keep my fingers careful. Each time, Mason seemed just as aware of the space between our hands. Then it happened. He reached up for the adjustable wrench at the same time I leaned down to pass it, and the loose cabinet door swung open hard. I flinched back, slipped slightly on the towel under my sock, and Mason caught my wrist before I could hit the counter. Fast. Firm. Warm. Careful. His voice changed completely. No joke. No smile. Just concern. I looked down at his hand around my wrist. He looked too. But he did not let go. Not right away. My pulse was ridiculous. I am fine. You almost cracked your hip on the counter. Very dramatic diagnosis. I work with pipes. I know when something is about to break. I laughed, but it came out quieter than I meant it to. Mason's thumb shifted once against my wrist, like he realized he was still holding me. Then he released me slowly. Too slowly. The place where his fingers had been felt warmer after he let go. That was unfair. He cleared his throat and turned back to the sink. You should probably stand over there. Why? Because you are distracting. I froze. Mason froze too, just slightly, like the words had gotten out before he approved them. Then he looked up at me from under the cabinet. No smirk this time. No easy cover. Just Mason, watching me like he could not take it back. My heart started pounding. I wanted to say something clever, something safe. Instead, I stood there holding a damp towel, completely exposed by silence. And that was the first time I realized Mason might not just be flirting because he could. He might be flirting because he meant it. The weird thing about almost breaking the rules is that nothing actually has to happen for everything to feel different. Mason went back to fixing the sink, and I went back to pretending I was useful, but the air in my kitchen had changed. It felt smaller now, warmer. Like every normal sound had a second meaning. The scrape of his tools. The soft breath he let out when something finally loosened. The way he reached for the coffee mug I had made him without looking, like he already knew where I would put it. I told myself to calm down. He had called me distracting. That was all. People said things. People flirted. People made jokes they did not mean. Except Mason had not sounded like he was joking. And that was becoming a serious issue for my ability to function as a person. Can you pass me the tape? His voice came from under the sink. I looked at the counter. The blue one. Yeah. I handed it down, careful this time. Too careful. Mason noticed, because apparently noticing things was his favorite hobby. His fingers closed around the tape, then stopped. You are scared to touch me now? My stomach tightened. I am scared you are going to make it weird. He slid out from under the cabinet just enough to look up at me. His hair was messy, one sleeve pushed higher than the other, a faint line of dust on his cheek. Me? Yes, you. I am very normal. You told me I was distracting. His eyes stayed on mine. You are. That shut me up completely. I hated that. I hated how one calm sentence from him could unplug my brain from my mouth. Mason sat up slowly, still on the floor, one arm resting on his bent knee. The kitchen went quiet again. Too quiet. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I almost jumped. Mason's mouth twitched like he wanted to smile, but decided not to. You always this nervous around plumbers? Only the ones who keep saying insane things in my kitchen. Fair. He stood then, close enough that I had to tilt my head a little to keep looking at him. There was no reason for him to be that close. There was also no reason for me not to step back. I did not. Mason's gaze moved over my face, slower than before. Not teasing. Not confident. Careful. Like he was checking for permission he was not ready to ask for out loud. Ethan. My name sounded different like that. Lower. Softer. My fingers curled against the counter behind me. Yeah. For 1 second, I thought he was going to say it. Whatever it was. That he was flirting. That I was not imagining it. That this was not how he treated everyone. His hand lifted slightly, not quite reaching for me, then stopped halfway between us. I looked at it. He looked at it too. The almost touch was somehow worse than if he had actually touched me. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then someone knocked on my front door. We both froze. The sound snapped through the apartment like a fire alarm. Mason dropped his hand first. I stepped back so fast my hip bumped the counter. Ethan. Mrs. Calloway's voice came from the hallway. My neighbor. Of course. Because apparently my apartment had become a sitcom with plumbing problems and emotional damage. You home? I brought your mail. It was in my box again. Mason looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. There was the smallest smile on his face now, but it looked strained. Like he was trying to hide the same thing I was. You should get that. Right. My voice came out rough. I walked to the door, then realized my hands were shaking a little. Fantastic. I opened it just enough to see Mrs. Calloway holding a stack of envelopes and wearing the exact expression of a woman who already knew too much. Her eyes flicked past my shoulder. Oh, he is back again. I took the mail too quickly. The sink is complicated. MHM. She leaned slightly, peeking into the apartment. Mason gave a polite little wave from the kitchen, like he had not almost done something that made my knees forget their purpose. Morning, ma'am. Mrs. Calloway smiled. Still fixing the sink. Mason glanced at me. Just one quick look. Trying to. Well, she handed me the last envelope. Some things take time. I wanted the floor to open. Thanks, Mrs. Calloway. She walked away with a knowing little hum that I would be thinking about for the rest of my life. I shut the door and stood there for a second, forehead almost touching the wood. When I turned around, Mason was watching me from the kitchen. The moment was gone. Not forgotten. Just interrupted. He picked up his wrench and looked down with a quiet breath. I should probably finish before your whole building starts guessing. I tried to laugh. It barely worked. Too late for that. Mason's eyes lifted. Yeah. A pause. Maybe. And somehow, that was worse than if he had denied everything. Mrs. Calloway did not keep things to herself. That was something I learned the hard way before lunch. Mason had barely finished packing up his tools when my phone started buzzing on the counter. One text from my best friend, Noah. Then another. Then 3 more in a row, because Noah treated silence like a personal attack. Why did Mrs. Calloway just tell me you have a hot handyman boyfriend? I stared at the screen, so long Mason noticed. Of course he did. He was standing by the sink, wiping his hands on a rag, pretending not to look while absolutely looking. Everything okay? I flipped my phone face down way too fast. Yep. Mason's eyebrow lifted. That was convincing. It is nothing. Nothing usually does not make people turn red. I hated him a little for being right. The phone buzzed again under my palm. Mason glanced at it, then at me. There was a tiny pause. Not jealous. Not exactly curious. Just aware. You can answer it. I do not need to. Ethan. He leaned one hip against the counter, crossing his arms loosely. If someone is checking on you, that is fine. The problem was, someone was not checking on me. Someone was probably building an entire fake relationship in a group chat. I picked up the phone and read the next message before I could stop myself. Is he still there? Tell him I said thank you for fixing your pipes and your personality. I made a noise that was not a laugh and not a cough. Mason's mouth curved. That bad. My friend is an idiot. Good idiot or bad idiot? Loud idiot. I locked the screen, but it was too late. Another message flashed before it went dark. Bro. If he is cute and he keeps coming back, that is not plumbing. Mason saw it. I knew he saw it because his expression changed for half a second before he looked away. My stomach dropped. He is joking. Sounds like a smart guy. Do not encourage him. Mason smiled, but it did not fully reach his eyes. He bent down to close his toolbox, movements slower now. The air had shifted again, but this time it was not warm. It was careful. Like Mrs. Calloway's teasing had been funny until someone else started saying the quiet part out loud. So, I forced a small laugh. Apparently the building thinks you are my boyfriend. Mason snapped the metal latch on his toolbox shut. Apparently. I waited for the joke. He always had one. Something easy. Something that would let us both breathe again. But he just stood there, looking at the floor for a second too long. My chest tightened. That is weird, right? The second I said it, I wanted to grab the words and shove them back into my mouth. Mason looked up. His face was calm, but not in the usual way. Is it? I froze. I mean, people assume things. Yeah. He nodded once. They do. The silence after that felt heavier than it should have. I could hear water moving somewhere in the wall, the old building settling around us, my phone buzzing again and again like Noah was trying to ruin my life in real time. Mason picked up his toolbox. I should head out. Too fast. Not angry. Not cold. Just pulled back. I felt it immediately, like someone had opened a window in December. Wait. Did I say something wrong? His hand stayed on the door handle. He looked at it instead of me. No, Mason. That got him to turn. Not fully. Just enough. You did not say anything wrong. His voice was quiet. I just forget sometimes that this is your apartment, and I am the guy your landlord sent. My stomach sank. That is not what I meant. I know. But he did not sound like he knew. He looked at me then. Really looked, and for the first time since he had walked into my kitchen, Mason seemed less sure of himself. Less like the guy who always had the next line ready. People talk, he added. Neighbors. Friends. Landlords. Whoever. I do not want to make things weird for you. I almost laughed because things were already weird. They had been weird since the first time he called me cute without blinking. But the way he said it made my throat tighten. Like he was not embarrassed of me. Like he was trying to protect me from something I had not even thought about yet. Noah does not care, I said. Mrs. Calloway probably thinks everyone under 40 is dating. Mason gave a small smile. Barely there. Still. Still what? His fingers flexed around the toolbox handle. Still probably better if I behave. There it was. The step back. The line drawn before either of us admitted we had been crossing it. I nodded because I did not know what else to do. Right? Professional. He looked like he hated that word as much as I did. Yeah. He opened the door, then paused in the hallway. I will be back tomorrow with the replacement valve. Should be the last visit. The last visit. That hit harder than it should have. I swallowed and tried to sound normal. Great. Mason's eyes held mine for 1 second too long. Yeah, great. Then he walked away, and my apartment felt too quiet before the door even closed. I told myself the last visit would make things easier. Mason would come in, fix the replacement valve, maybe make one polite comment about the sink, and leave. Then my apartment could go back to being normal. I could go back to working too late, drinking bad coffee, and not thinking about a man who had somehow turned a plumbing issue into the most confusing week of my life. That was the plan. The plan lasted until 11:18, when his knock hit my door and my stomach did that stupid drop again. I opened it. Mason stood in the hallway with his toolbox and a paper cup holder in one hand. 2 iced coffees. He looked tired. Not messy, not bad, just quieter than usual, like he had slept about as much as I had. I was near the coffee shop, he said before I could ask. Figured you would pretend you did not need one. I stared at the cups. You remembered my order again. His mouth moved like he almost had a joke ready. Then he did not use it. Yeah. Just that. Yeah. Somehow that landed harder than the flirting. I stepped aside, and he came in, but the apartment felt different this time. He did not tease me for cleaning. He did not comment on my socks. He just set the coffee on the counter and crouched by the sink, keeping his focus too carefully on the pipes. Professional. That word sat between us like a brick. I leaned against the fridge, watching him work, hating how much I missed the version of him who made me nervous on purpose. So this is really the last visit. The question slipped out before I could make it sound casual. Mason's hand paused inside the cabinet. Only for a second. Should be. Great. My voice did not match the word at all. He noticed. Of course he did. Mason sat back on his heels and looked up at me. Is it? I swallowed. Is what? Great. The kitchen went still. Outside, someone honked on the street below, distant and useless. I looked at my coffee because looking at him felt dangerous. I mean, my sink working is generally considered a good thing. That is not what I meant. His voice was quiet. Careful. I hated careful from him. Careful made everything feel real. Mason. I rubbed my thumb along the cold side of the cup. You were the one who said you should behave. His jaw tightened just a little. Not angry. More like the words had hit exactly where they were supposed to. I know. So, I am trying to let you. A long pause. Then he laughed once. Barely, with no humor in it. Yeah, that is the problem. My eyes lifted. Mason looked down at his hands, still dusty from work, fingers curled loosely over the rag. For the first time, he looked like he did not know where to put himself. I thought stepping back would fix it, he admitted. Make it less weird. Make me stop thinking about it. My chest tightened slowly. About what? His eyes came back to mine. No smirk. No easy out. You. I forgot how to breathe. Mason stood, not moving closer yet, but the space between us felt charged anyway. I am not trying to put you in an awkward spot. I know how this looks. I am in your apartment because your landlord called me. That matters. He glanced toward the sink, then back at me. But I was not joking as much as I pretended I was. My hand tightened around the coffee cup. The plastic lid popped softly under my thumb. When I called you cute, my face burned instantly. Mason, when I said you were distracting. His voice got lower, not louder. When I came back after hours and said you did not feel like a client. The room tilted a little. Not literally, but close enough. Every moment I had shoved into the box labeled, probably nothing started spilling out all over the floor. The looks, the pauses, the way he remembered my name, my coffee, my nervous habits. Then why did you pull back? I hated how small that came out. Mason's expression softened, and that almost made it worse. Because Mrs. Calloway saw us. Your friend texted. And you looked scared. I was not scared of you. I know. He took one slow step closer. But I thought maybe you were scared of what people would think. I looked away, because that answer was too close to true and not true at the same time. I was scared I made it up. Mason went still. Made what up? I let out a shaky breath, staring at the counter between us. This, whatever this has been. Silence. Then Mason moved closer, slowly enough that I could have stepped away if I wanted to. I did not. He stopped beside the counter, close but not touching, his hand resting near mine. You did not make it up. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck. You are sure? Mason looked at me like the answer had been obvious for days, and he was tired of both of us pretending it was not. Ethan, I brought you coffee because I spent all morning wondering if I had ruined my last excuse to see you. The words hit me in the chest. Soft, but direct. I could not laugh them off. I could not file them under friendly. Mason's fingers shifted on the counter, close enough that our knuckles almost touched. Almost. This time, he did not pull away. I do not want to go back to normal, he said. Not if normal means acting like I do not notice you. For a second, neither of us moved. Then my phone buzzed on the table behind me, loud and stupid and perfectly timed. We both glanced at it. Noah's name flashed on the screen. Mason let out a quiet breath, half amused, half frustrated. "You're loud, idiot?" I nodded, still trying to remember how words worked. "Yeah." Mason's eyes came back to mine, warmer now. "Maybe do not answer that yet." And the worst part was, I did not want to. Mason was close enough that I could see the tiny crease between his brows when he looked at me, like he was trying to decide whether staying was brave or stupid. My phone kept buzzing on the table behind me. Noah again, probably sending 12 follow-up messages, because that was his love language. But I did not move. Neither did Mason. "Do not answer that yet," he had said, and I hated how badly I wanted to listen. For 1 second, everything felt simple. His hand near mine, his coffee on my counter, the sink finally quiet. Then the lock on my front door rattled. We both turned at the same time. My entire body went cold. "Ethan," Noah's voice came through the door before it opened. "I swear, if you are dead, I am taking your good monitor." I closed my eyes. Oh my God. Mason stepped back so fast, it almost hurt to watch. By the time Noah walked in with a grocery bag in one hand and my spare key in the other, Mason was halfway across the kitchen, suddenly very interested in packing up his tools. The space between us felt huge. Noah stopped in the doorway, looked at me, then at Mason, then back at me. His face did the thing. The smug thing. The thing that meant I was going to suffer. "Wow," he said slowly. "This is not the energy of a sink repair." "Noah." My voice came out sharp. Too sharp. Mason's jaw shifted. He did not look at me. Noah lifted both hands, still holding the bag. "Relax. I brought bagels. And emotional support. Mostly for the plumbing, apparently." I wanted to disappear into the wall. Mason snapped his toolbox shut with a quiet click. "I was just finishing up. Just finishing up." The words landed wrong. Like a door closing. Noah's smile faded a little, because even he could tell the room had changed. "Oh, sorry. I did not mean to interrupt." Mason picked up his toolbox. "You did not." He finally looked at me then, but his expression had gone careful again. That professional mask I hated. "Valve is fixed. You should be all set." My chest tightened. "Mason." He shook his head once, barely. "Not rude. Just small. I will send the paperwork to your landlord." Noah's eyes moved between us, suddenly quiet. I knew I should say something. Anything. But my brain had locked up. Part of me was embarrassed Noah had walked in. Part of me was scared Mason thought I was embarrassed of him. And part of me was still standing in that 1 second before the door opened, when Mason said he did not want to go back to normal. Now he looked like normal was exactly where he was running. "Thanks," I managed, and I hated myself immediately. Mason's mouth tightened like that was the answer he expected and the one he did not want. "Yeah, no problem." He walked past Noah with a polite nod and out into the hall. The door clicked shut behind him. Quiet. Too quiet. Noah set the bagels on the counter like they were suddenly inappropriate. "Okay," he said carefully. "I messed that up." I stared at the closed door. No, my voice sounded hollow. "I did." Noah leaned back against the counter, all the joking gone from his face. "What happened before I walked in?" I rubbed both hands over my face. "He told me he was not joking." "About flirting?" I nodded. "About me." Noah went still. "And then I walked in." And then he pulled back. "Because I walked in?" "Because I looked like I wanted to die." Noah winced. "You kind of always look like that when feelings happen." I almost laughed. It did not come out right. My stomach felt twisted. I think he thought I was embarrassed. "Were you?" The question hit harder than I expected. I looked at the sink. The towels. The coffee Mason brought me, sweating on the counter. No, my throat tightened. I was scared. Noah's voice softened. "Of what?" I did not answer right away, because saying it out loud made it sound pathetic. But not saying it was worse. That if I let it be real, it would end as soon as the repair did. Noah did not tease me. That was how I knew it was bad. He just picked up Mason's untouched coffee and turned it slowly in his hand. "Ethan." "What?" "His number is on the work order, right?" I looked at him. My heart kicked once. That is not what that is for. Maybe not. He set the cup back down. "But neither was bringing you coffee." I stared at the door again, imagining Mason walking down the stairs, convincing himself he had done the right thing by leaving. The thought made my chest ache in a way I could not explain away. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was not Noah. It was an unknown number. One message. "I am sorry if I made things harder for you." You do not have to respond. I read it 3 times. Then a second message appeared before I could breathe. I just need you to know I was not regretting what I said. I was regretting saying it where someone could make you feel cornered. My hand tightened around the phone. Noah leaned over my shoulder, then backed away fast. Okay, yeah, you need to answer that. But I could not move. Because Mason had pulled back, but he had not disappeared. And that somehow made it hurt more. Noah left me alone after that, which was probably the kindest thing he had ever done. He took one bagel, pointed at my phone, and said, "Do not be an idiot in the boring direction." Then he walked out like he had not just wrecked my entire nervous system and fixed it in the same 10 minutes. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at Mason's message. You do not have to respond. That was the part that got me. Because he meant it. He was giving me space, giving me an exit, letting me pretend nothing happened if that was what I needed. The problem was, I was tired of pretending. So I typed 3 different replies, deleted all of them, then finally sent one sentence before I could overthink it. Can you come back? The 3 little dots showed up almost immediately, then disappeared, then came back. My heart was ridiculous. A minute later, his reply appeared. Are you sure? I stared at it, chest tight. No jokes. No smooth line. Just Mason checking if I meant it. I typed yes. Then, because apparently I was trying to scare myself to death, I added, not for the sink. He knocked 12 minutes later. Same rhythm. 1 sharp tap, 2 softer ones. But this time, when I opened the door, he did not have his toolbox. Just his jacket, his keys in one hand, and this cautious look on his face that made my throat ache a little. Hey. His voice was quiet. Hey. I stepped back. Come in. Mason walked inside, but only a few steps. He stopped near the edge of the kitchen like he was afraid to take up too much space now. That hurt more than I expected. This was the same guy who had leaned against my counter like he belonged there, who had made my apartment feel smaller and warmer and impossible to ignore. Now he looked like he was waiting for permission to breathe. I closed the door. The clicks sounded too loud. Noah left? I said, because apparently that was the first brilliant thing my brain found. Mason nodded. Okay. A pause. He seems nice. He is annoying. Usually the same thing. I almost smiled. Almost. Then the silence came back. Not empty. Full. Mason looked at the sink, then at the coffee on the counter, then finally at me. Ethan, I am sorry. My chest tightened. For what? For making this complicated. You did not. His mouth moved like he did not believe me. I am serious. So am I. That stopped him. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, hating how nervous I felt and hating even more that I was done hiding it. I got scared when Noah walked in. Mason's eyes softened, but he did not interrupt. Not because of you. Not because I was embarrassed. I let out a breath and looked toward the floor. I did not know what we were. And then someone else saw it before I even knew how to say it. Mason stayed quiet for a second. Then he took one slow step closer. What do you want it to be? The question landed right in the center of the room. Simple. Terrifying. No place to hide. I laughed once under my breath, but it was shaky. That is unfair. I know. His eyes stayed on mine. But I am tired of guessing wrong. My fingers curled at my sides. I thought you regretted it. His face changed. Leaving? I nodded. I thought you pulled back because you realized this was a bad idea. Mason looked down, jaw tight, then shook his head. No, he took another step closer. I pulled back because I saw your face when Noah came in, and I thought I had put you in a position where you had to explain me. I did not want to explain you. His expression flickered. I heard how that sounded a second too late. Wait. No. I swallowed. I did not want to explain you because I did not want to reduce you to some plumber Noah caught me flirting with in my kitchen. Mason went still. Then what am I? My heart started pounding. There it was. The thing we had been circling for days. I looked at his hand, hanging loose at his side. Close enough to reach. Not touching. Waiting. You were the guy who brought me coffee because you noticed I was tired, I said quietly. The guy who remembered my name before he had any reason to. The guy who made my apartment feel weird after he left. Mason's breath shifted. Barely. But I heard it. Weird good or weird bad. I looked up at him. Do not make me say it twice. For the first time that night, he smiled. Small. Relieved. Real. Okay. The space between us felt thin now. Almost gone. Mason lifted his hand slowly, giving me every chance to move away. I did not. His fingers touched mine. Light it first. A question. I answered by turning my hand over. His palm slid against mine, warm and steady, and my chest loosened in a way that almost scared me. We just stood there, holding hands in my kitchen like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, and also the hardest thing either of us had done all week. I was not joking, Mason said softly. About any of it. I nodded, looking at our hands. I know. And I do not want the last time I see you to be me walking out because I got scared. My throat tightened. Then do not let it be. Mason looked at me for a long second. No smirk. No cover. Have dinner with me. My heart kicked. Like a date. Exactly like a date. I should have said yes immediately. Instead, because I was apparently still me, I looked at the sink and said, "Are you allowed to date former clients?" Mason's smile finally turned familiar. Only the ones with emotionally significant plumbing issues. I laughed, and the tension broke just enough for both of us to breathe. That sounds serious. His thumb moved once against my hand. It is. And this time, when the room went quiet, neither of us tried to pretend it meant nothing. Our first date was not dramatic, which was probably why I trusted it. No expensive restaurant. No perfect lighting. No rain starting at exactly the right moment like a movie was trying too hard. Just a small diner 6 blocks from my apartment, the kind with cracked red booths, bottomless coffee, and a waitress who called everyone honey whether she liked them or not. Mason got there before me. I saw him through the window, sitting in a corner booth, tapping his thumb against a paper napkin like he was nervous. That did something strange to my chest. Because Mason Reed had walked into my apartment like he owned every room he entered. He had flirted with a straight face, held my wrist like I mattered, and made me forget how words worked more than once. But sitting there without his toolbox, without some pipe to hide behind, he looked almost human, almost unsure. I stood outside for a second longer than necessary, watching him look toward the door every few seconds. Then he spotted me. His face changed. Not a huge smile. Not some smooth, confident grin. Just relief. Like he had been afraid I would not come. I opened the door and walked in before I could overthink it. "Hey." Mason stood too fast and bumped the table with his knee. The coffee spoon jumped. He looked down at it, then back at me. That was smoother in my head. I laughed, and just like that, I could breathe again. "Good. I was worried you were going to be cool the whole time." "Absolutely not." He slid into the booth across from me. "I used up all my cool fixing your sink." The waitress came by, poured coffee, gave Mason one long look, then looked at me. "You two need a minute?" Mason's eyes flicked to mine. "Maybe two." She walked away smiling like Mrs. Calloway had a cousin. For a while, we talked about normal things. His sister's terrible water heater. My client who wanted a logo that looked more trustworthy but less corporate, whatever that meant. His dog from high school. The fact that I had never owned a toolbox, and he found that personally upsetting. It was easy. Not because the tension disappeared. It was still there, sitting between the salt shaker and the sugar packets. But it did not feel like something we had to survive anymore. Halfway through dinner, Mason reached for the ketchup at the same time I did. Our fingers touched. Familiar. Small. This time, neither of us made a joke. Neither of us pulled back. Mason looked at our hands, then at me. "Still okay?" My throat tightened a little, but in a good way. "Yeah." His thumb brushed lightly over my knuckles before he let go, like he was being careful with something he had decided was worth keeping. After dinner, he walked me home even though I told him he did not have to. "I know," he answered, hands in his jacket pockets. "I wanted to." The city was cold, the sidewalks damp from old snow, traffic moving slow along the street. Nothing special, just Chicago being Chicago. But walking beside him felt different from anything I had imagined. Quieter. Better. When we reached my building, Mrs. Calloway was coming through the front door with a grocery bag and the timing of a woman who should have been investigated. Her eyes landed on Mason first. Then me. Then the space between us. "Well," she said, smiling. "Sink working." I felt my face heat immediately. Mason glanced at me, and for one second I thought he would step back. Not because he wanted to. Because he thought I might need him to. So I made the choice before fear could make it for me. I reached for his hand. Right there in front of Mrs. Calloway, under the ugly yellow lobby light, with my heart banging against my ribs like it wanted out. Mason looked down at our hands. Then his fingers closed around mine, warm and steady. He did not pull away. Neither did I. "Yeah," I said, trying not to smile too hard. "It is fixed." Mrs. Calloway's grin turned almost smug. Good. Some leaks are worth the trouble. Mason coughed like he was hiding a laugh. I stared at the floor, but I was smiling now. I could not help it. She walked past us humming, completely proud of herself. When the elevator doors opened, Mason and I stepped inside together, still holding hands. The doors slid shut, and for a second, it was just us and our reflection in the scratched metal panel. I looked at him. You know she is going to tell the entire building. Mason squeezed my hand once. Probably. You okay with that? He turned toward me, expression soft but sure. Ethan, I came back without a toolbox. I think I am past pretending this is plumbing. I laughed, but it came out quieter than usual. Maybe because something in me settled when he said it. Not everything. I was still me. I would still overthink. Still get nervous. Still hear Noah's voice in my head telling me not to be an idiot in the boring direction. But Mason was there, fingers laced through mine, choosing not to make it vague anymore. And that mattered. Upstairs, we stopped outside my door, the same door where he had first smiled at me with his toolbox in hand. The same kitchen waited on the other side. Same counter. Same sink. Same apartment. But it did not feel the same anymore. Mason looked at me, then at the door. So. His mouth curved. Can I see the famous emotionally significant sink? I rolled my eyes and unlocked the door. One date, and you are already making fun of my plumbing trauma. I take commitment seriously. He followed me inside, and this time, he did not come in because something was broken. He came in because I asked him to. Because he wanted to. Because somewhere between the leak, the coffee, the almost touches, and the things we were both too scared to say, the routine had changed. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just enough that pretending felt harder than telling the truth. Mason set his jacket over the chair and glanced at the sink. Looks good. I leaned against the counter, watching him. You do decent work. He stepped closer, smiling. Decent. Do not let it go to your head. His hand found mine again, easy this time. Like it belonged there. Like maybe it had been heading there since the first morning. Too late. I looked down at our hands and felt something warm spread through my chest. I used to think love had to announce itself. Big words. Big moments. Something impossible to miss. But sometimes it starts with dirty water on the kitchen floor and a stranger who notices your coffee order. Sometimes it is a guy standing in your apartment, not fixing anything, just staying. And for once, when Mason did not let go, I did not tell myself it meant nothing. I just held on.